Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm reviewing the pilot of another sitcom. Those of you who've been watching Everybody Loves Raymond and my Faulty Towers reviews knows how this type of format goes. And this one is a Patreon request from my buddy John. Always throws out interesting ones, either films I haven't seen, or occasionally he'll throw me a curveball like this one. It's the pilot episode of a show I used to watch when I was a Ute, off and on, but I don't remember if I ever saw this episode during that time, which of course is the pilot of Home Improvement, a 1991 to 1999 sitcom starring Tim Allen, Patricia Richardson, Earl Heinzman, and of course we got Jonathan Taylor Thomas in there. Just a reminder before I get too far into the video, if you'd like to support the channel, you can join the Patreon or PayPal down below. PayPal is for one-off requests or one-off support, and if you want to support the channel repeatedly and gain access to videos early or be able to suggest topics for future videos such as this, go to Patreon route. Either way, your support is appreciated. Now, Tim Allen. He was definitely a biggish deal in the 90s. That's when he was riding high, mainly with this show and then his film career, The Santa Claus. He was in Galaxy Quest, which is a film I haven't seen. I know so many people are going to go, oh, you've never seen Galaxy Quest? Yeah. And as I've mentioned before, I wasn't really into Star Trek until the last couple years, so put those two together, you can see why. Even though it has other actors in it I like, Alan Rickman, Sigourney Weaver, I think you got, I forget his name, the guy from Monka. His name is escaping me at the moment, I don't have it in the notes, but even with all them, it's like, yeah, I just didn't watch it. Santa Claus I remember watching a couple times when I was a kid. I haven't really watched the sequels all the way through, so no comment on them. And I haven't really seen much of Mr. Allen's other films, other than, of course, him voicing Buzz Lightyear in the Toy Story films. That's one of the best movie insults of all time. You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity. This is falling with style. And, of course, a lot of that film career, you could say it was probably, some of it is a little bit of his pre-show success, but a lot of it is because he was riding high on this. Sometimes when actors or comedians get a sitcom, they'll ride high on that success during it and then continue on afterwards, and other times they kind of trail out a little bit. I haven't really touched on that in the Raymond series, but a little bit of that happens with Ray. I mean, he did get some work afterwards. I mean, he had the show Men of a Certain Age. He still continued his stand-up comedy career. And he's made films. Of course, Ice Age is the main bread and butter in that department, but he's done other ones. Welcome to Mooseport's probably his big one. I'll probably review that one around the time I get to the point in the show where he was at that. I might actually start doing that with his other films. It'd be a little interesting change of pace, especially since they do mention Ice Age in one of the blooper reels where his pager goes off and he's like, Ice Age just went over 50 million. Now back onto the show. I only have vague memories of this show from when I was a kid, you know, the main concept. We got Tim the Toolman Taylor, who is Tim Allen's character. You got his wife Jill. I don't remember much about her on the show other than her being the typical sitcom wife, but not as stereotypical. There's a little bit more, and watching this pilot episode I can see it. Which, the only sitcom I've really watched in recent times has been Raymond. Going from that to this, it's like, wow. Tim Taylor is more of a better spouse, I'm gonna put it that way, than and a more understanding spouse than Ray is. I mean, they both do stupid stuff and disregard stuff their wife says in different contexts, but Tim seems to be more like genuine in it, whereas Ray still has that man-child vibe. But there's also that whole little different dynamic there, as Tim and his wife don't have to contend with in-laws living across the street all the time that baby him. And they have a lot of kids too, but they also have an understanding neighbor. Of course, the often heard and seen from the side and over the fence Wilson, who is an excellent character to see, and I just love the fact that you never see him straight up. Adds a little bit to his mystique. I mean, you see him from the side, but you never see him from straight on, and the camera shot's always at an angle. Always good there. Of course, I remember Wilson. I remember his co-star, played by Richard Karn. We got Al. In this show, in this episode, we are introduced to him, but we don't get the feeling of what type of character he is fully, other than he works with Tim on the show. And that is that he is really the real handyman on the show. You get a little bit of that, but it's not fully set in stone. It's just hinted at the fact he's like, Tim, this is the recommended tool bit. And of course, you see their dichotomy, whereas despite the fact that Tim is always preaching safety, he really wants to go up and aboard with more power. Whereas Al's one that wants to do it by the book, and you can imagine, and he's like, oh my god, Al, really? You gotta go with this again? And the kids, they're young at this point, so there's really not a lot to their characters, at least in this episode, other than them being the cute, typical little sitcom kids. I mean, even over on Everybody Loves Raymond, you kind of get that feeling with their kids. I mean, Allie's had episodes where we've seen a little bit of her personality, but it's more the typical young kids. Whereas the twins, they're really interchangeable. Even to the fact that when they would film certain lines, they would go back and forth on which one they'd have say the line, and then use the best take. Daddy's weird. Stuff like that. I do remember a Halloween episode that ended with Al having his head in a little thing and there being a tarantula moving. There's like other like brief flashes, but I can't really remember a lot of it because since the show ended in '99, I never really watched a lot of it. It's not like The Simpsons or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where I remembered a lot of the stuff, even if I haven't gone back and watched the seasons that I haven't watched in a long time. But a lot of stuff is there, like with The Simpsons. I was watching during the whole Who Shot Mr. Burns thing. I remember watching a lot of the episodes in the first run, and the first run of Futurama, there was a lot of episodes I watched first run, like the original series finale I watched first run. I didn't know that was a series finale, but I watched it. And of course, Fresh Prince, all that stuff in syndication, and even parts of Beavis and Butthead I remember watching as a youth. I know someone's going to go, oh great. No, but yeah, I did enjoy it. Of course, I didn't see Beavis and Butthead Are Dead until it ran in syndication, like in '97 at some point, when my brother was still living out in the travel trailer. Oh yes, the travel trailer. I think I've told a lot of stories about that trailer. Now, this episode is directed by John Pesquin, which I'm looking at his filmography right here. I got it actually up on IMDb on my phone. I'm sorry, I just didn't have time to do notes this time. He directed episodes of Tim Allen's last show, Last Man Standing. He directed episodes of Roseanne, both on the original and in the reboot before they discontinued it due to Roseanne Barr's big mouth. Directed episodes of George Lopez, which I'm curious which ones. Oh, George versus George, that's the one involving his brother. That was in there. That was a fun one. W Dad and Dating, that's a good one. Bringing Home the Bacon. Fishing Cubans. That one has one of my favorite endings to it. It's go time! Now, George Lopez, that's a show that I plan on reviewing one day down the road. I gotta get more of the show, though. Oh, he directed Jungle to Jungle and the Santa Claus, so you get the Tim Allen connection there. There's not really a lot flashy about this episode when it comes from a directing standpoint, but for a sitcom, it's serviceable. The screenplay was written by Carmen Finestra and David, I'm probably going to butcher this last name, McFadden, and he's also one of the creators. These are actually all the creators, so I guess they all have a writing credit. Carmen worked on The Cosby Show, Where the Heart Is, What Women Want as executive producer, Soul Man, Buddies, Thunder Alley. Matt Williams is another creator and writer. He worked on Bernie. He's another one on The Cosby Show, Good Sam's, What Men Want, St. George, so we got another George Lopez connection there. And of course for David, Bernie as well, What Women Want. Sensing a pattern here is also St. George, so they all work together. You know, usually friends in the business, I could see them working together. Now, I've talked about this show and some of the memories and all that, and I haven't really talked about the plot. Now, it is a very simple plot, which I know some people are going to say, well, a lot of sitcom episodes are, unless they decide to touch on something deep, or it's like one that's a multi-episode arc, as we've seen as I've gone through Raymond. But for a pilot, you really want to do it simple, because you got to sell the premise to the investors and to the networks, and then they're going to decide whether they're going to pick it up or not. And this plot is so simple, but it also sells home all the characters and their dynamics and, you know, what they do. And the main plot here is that Tim decides he's going to make the dishwasher more powerful, which goes with this whole more power thing. Now, the lead up to it is that we see when he's filming the show and see the beginning part of his show, which the whole premise of how he's trying to get people to watch the show with him when he's probably been doing the show for a while, it feels forced. It works within the context of this episode because it's the pilot episode, but if you were to be watching these episodes in a random order in season 1 and saw this, you'd be like, yeah, that's a little But for the first episode, it works. You just gotta really suspend your disbelief because it's the pilot episode there. His wife, which I'm gonna get her name here because I haven't looked, Jill, excuse me. She is having a job interview. She's getting her blouse ready. She says she's going to go for the interview. And she tells Tim not to do anything stupid. And he brings up the dishwasher because she wants him to load the dishwasher. And how he brings up a point that's a little weird with it. And that is you got to wash off the top of the dish before you throw it in there. And that's where Tim gets the idea, like, I'll make a more powerful dishwasher. He's like, no. Remember what happened last time we tried to do that with the blender? Now, they never really explain what went wrong with the blender. We still see it on there. Tim, as an aside, says, well, it's the only blender that can puree a brick, so I'm guessing it has a lot of speed, but probably only the one setting, so that's what's wrong with it. Well, once she leaves, even though he has a little talk with Wilson, which is another theme throughout the show I do like, is that when he needs advice, he goes to his elder neighbor and brings up stuff. We see it a couple times throughout the episode. Now, the first couple times, Tim is talking with him and he hears something and he gets out of it what he wants to hear. Like the first thing that Wilson tells him, about the elders sharing advice around the campfire. Tim is like, you know what? I'll do that. I'll show my sons what I do. So with one of his sons, he goes there and they're fixing, well, he calls it fixing. It's more like breaking the dishwasher. And first he hurts himself by not turning off the right electricity and he gives himself an electrical burn. Now, while his wife is gone, he does fix the dishwasher. We still see some more electrical problems later as the episode goes along. And she shows up. She's all excited, like, oh yeah, that interview went well. She thinks she nailed the interview, which definitely something I can go with. I mean, there are times where I'm like, yeah, I don't think I did well. And other times I'm like, yeah, I nailed it. But before she shows up, Tim already got the call from the place that interviewed her and like, yeah, we're going to be going with another candidate. So he's going to have to break the bad news to her. But the news comes after she sees the dishwasher, so she's so annoyed. And this comes a little bit of the thematic thing about their marriage. And it also gets you to think a little bit about your marriage. And even though it presents this as the stay-at-home wife who wants to have a job to feel fulfilled and the husband who goes to work and feels that he makes enough money for the both of them, in a more modern sense, you can apply this to any type of relationship dynamic, regardless of what your orientation is. You can even flip it and it be the wife that goes to work and makes enough money and the stay-at-home husband that's not feeling as fulfilled. You can swap everything out. But it is something that you can get. You're just looking at it to where she doesn't feel fulfilled. I mean, in some marriages, this would be considered the dream. The husband having enough money to make it to where they're all comfortable and his wife doesn't have to work. But in other ones, even with that, the wife would want to do something. And even though I'm not in the same type of situation, obviously single, no kids and all that, with my ADHD, I can understand not wanting, feeling unfulfilled. Like even if you have everything, you're just feeling stir crazy. Like you got cabin fever, to use a traveling analogy, where you're feeling a little jittery, like I need to do something. Which I think I've brought the story up before. After I graduated from high school, I got really bad insomnia off and on all throughout the summer and the fall because I had nothing really to do. My mind was not being stimulated. I felt unfulfilled. And then started college and boom. And of course now that I woke, boom. So my mind is perfectly stimulated, sometimes a little overly stimulated. But to tie that back in with Jill, even though she has all the stuff, she just feels like her only purpose there is to just be the wife and nothing else, and she needs more fulfillment. Which is a character arc she does share a little bit with Deborah over on Everybody Loves Raymond. Now, the circumstances there are different, and of course, like we see in an episode, Deborah does try to go back to work to try to feel a bit more fulfilled. And like Deborah, she has a husband that just doesn't understand. And watching this, as it was going through that part in Tim said the stupid thing. I'm like, ooh, Tim, you might want to back away and make sure there are no sharp knives there. If this was a HBO show, there probably would be stuff like that. And Tim doesn't understand it, and another reason he goes and talks with Wilson, like, I don't get it. And Tim, while talking with Wilson, he gets the idea that maybe while you're having a conversation with her, you're not having a conversation with her. You're talking, but you're not fully listening. It's like You're hearing her words come to you, but you're not understanding what they mean. I forget the phrase that he uses, but Tim later uses it on the show as a way to apologize to his wife, and she does accept it. It's one of those. It's asymmetrical. That's what he was, asymmetrical, to where you're just having a conversation with yourself while you're having a conversation with her. Now he does apologize, and they do make up. But of course, since this is only the pilot episode, we know he's probably going to have a lot more screw ups later down the road, and they're going to have more fights and all that. But as that one lady in the One Raymond episode says, in order for there to be comedy, you have to have friction. There's got to be some elements pushing at one another. And she's right, and here we have it. And all in all, it is a pretty fun pilot. It does establish the characters, mainly the Taylors. Their little dynamic. We get a little bit of dynamic with Kids. It establishes Wilson being the neighbor who gives out sage wisdom and random facts. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's one reason I love Wilson, is remembering all those weird facts and trying the weird foods, like he's grilling squirrel. Semi-establishes Al, but we're going to have other episodes there showing all the people that watch the show, which, by the way, the audience we see in the show is the actual studio audience, so that's a nice little way to use that type of camera angle. No, it's a pretty fun pilot. I definitely see myself marathoning this show one day down the road once I get a hold of more of it, or actually find a streaming site that actually has it. I mean, I watched it on Amazon, but it's one of those ones you got to buy it or rent it. And for some of them that's good, but this is one I'd really like to actually get the hard copy or find a streaming site to fully watch it. I don't know if I do episode by episode of it, or do like what I did with Peacemaker and House and do the whole season one, or just do what I did with Star Trek and just review certain episodes. Because I know there's sitcoms that are older that I'd probably only review certain episodes, or ones that just pop out with me if I didn't do full season ones. But this is definitely one I'm enjoying. I mean, there's a lot of other sitcoms I'm enjoying too that I'm watching off and on in ways I'm not going to mention here, but I'll just tell you a couple of them. MASH, Frasier, Cheers. I might talk about them one day down the road. But John, thank you for the request. I can't wait to see what you're going to have me watch next month. And like I said, if you guys want to have video requests like this, go down there for the Patreon. Until next time, guys.